Well, I think every single individual pledge that's made adds up to a transformation in how we care for people with dementia and the people who care for them. Meeting you changed my life, and meeting your mum was one of the most special moments in my life. And as long as I'm in politics and as long as I've got any influence in government, my pledge is to help and support people who are working so hard to make life better for people with dementia.
It's really important that we're demonstrating top-class practice in hearing the voices of carers and making change as a result. And I just would want also to assure all the staff of NHS Scotland that I'm completely supportive of them giving their testimony as to what they will do in relation to this programme. So to me, it's about hearing voices and answering to these voices that we hear.
One of the things that's really important for us in NHS Ayrshire Arran is to ensure it's from board to bedside. An example of us working with Tommy is where our Chief Executive invited Tommy to come and speak to the board. Usually we have vox pops at the board, but the Chief Executive was very keen to ensure that we had Tommy in person. It's a demonstration of how important dementia is for us as a board, but also that aspect of looking after the carers of people who have dementia. So it's that overall round we wanted to make sure we captured it. A further aspect of that is the blog that then our Executive Nurse Director, Fiona McQueen, then wrote for Tommy to actually try and explain why we think it's important and our input to it.
When John Burns, our Chief Executive, said to me, what did I think of Tommy coming to our NHS board meeting? If I'm being honest, I thought it was a bit curious, but I also thought if we're really serious about ensuring that we work in partnership with carers and with people who use our services, then why wouldn't we have a localised version of Tommy on tour at the NHS board? And he came to the NHS board meeting and blew us away. Just anyone who's either been with Tommy or seen his presentation cannot fail to be moved. And in a way, it haunted me, his presentation. And I couldn't quite understand why I had been so moved. And he asked me to do a blog for him, and it was a real privilege and honour to write about my reflections on what had happened at the board meeting and I guess what our intentions were. And I don't know whether it was the son who so passionately loved his mother that touched me, or if it was the way he'd been let down by our services, or if it was the way he so honestly and passionately talked about his needs, his mum's needs, what Joan had needed and what Joan would have wanted. But whatever it was, it absolutely lit a passion in me. To my commitment and my pledge was to make sure whatever happened here within NHS Ayrshire Arran, our pledges would be made. So my pledge as the Nurse Director of the board was to create the conditions, the climate, to keep things going.
We have a key partnership with NHS Ayrshire Arran. They're one of our main educational partners. They fund some of our programmes, some of our research. And they introduced Tommy to us as part of the broader exposure about the voice of people with dementia, understanding that voice. And so he has been involved in, just recently, talking to some of our second-year students.
Yeah, we've been fortunate that despite having started off with just 8 sessions with Tommy, he agreed to do another 2 sessions for us because so many of our staff said they hadn't managed to get along to it because we did it through the holiday period. So we've had over 500 staff. That's not just clinical staff, that's from across the whole span of our staff who've come to the sessions both in Ayr and at Crosshouse. We've seen the police, we've seen council staff, we've seen care home staff, we've seen fire and rescue, all of them coming along to the sessions by Tommy, so it was really good. Part of that though is more important than just a number of over 500 is we've had almost 260, 270 pledges by those individuals. And what we've asked for is just give us one thing, just one thing you'll do differently, not a whole lot of things. And that's what the leafs are, it's the pledges from those individuals, just one. So we've got over 260 pledges.
We already within Ayrshire had been pushing very, very hard to be person-centred and to really get up alongside our patients and their loved ones. And sometimes we were fantastic at it and sometimes we weren't good at it, and actually sometimes it was awful. So for some time we'd been trying to connect much better with people. We wanted to listen to feedback. So although it was a start of our incredible journey with Tommy, it was also a continuation of a journey that we'd already started. So looking at our frailty pathway, the way we had radically changed the services we provided for older people who came to our accident emergency departments, some fantastic clinical leadership from our clinicians, our delirium pathway as well, so that these were areas that were absolutely focused on what was right and proper for people. But they were hard, because it's actually quite hard to change emergency and acute services. It's hard for us to remember that the person who's in front of us actually is a person at times. And what Tommy did was just bring it absolutely back to the core and central being of what's important, not just to people who have dementia, but just to people and their families and their loved ones.
I think another clear demonstration for us is when we put forward the role of the nurse consultant. Now, Alzheimer's Scotland dementia nurse consultants are funded by Alzheimer's Scotland primarily, but we were the first board to actually say that Janice's role will be a full-time role and it will be a permanent contract. And we were lucky that our colleagues in University of the West of Scotland also fund a day a week of Janice, and it's that element of us working together. It's not either or, it's all of it, and I think that also demonstrates why we are so keen to ensure that dementia is a focus for us in this board, and that it is a place where we look after people better than we have done in the past.
And I first met Tommy a few years ago, and we've met at various events over that period of time. But probably the biggest impact that I noted that he had was at one of the person-centred events where he gave a talk. And the impact that he had on the audience was unbelievable. And I don't think there was a dry eye left in the house. And having spoken to him over a period of time, and we negotiated that he would come to Ayrshire and do a series of talks. The staff that have actually came along has been right across the board, from care home staff, students, trained staff, directors, and the effect has been phenomenal. And that is all people talk about. Have you been? Have you been? Are there more dates? Within my role as nurse consultant, although I'm 1 day a week with UWS, a lot of my time is actually spent in clinical situations within wards. And the difference that I have seen in staff's attitudes, in staff behaviours, in staff's keenness is remarkable. The impact that Tommy has had and the training has had has been phenomenal.
Well, first of all, I'm one of the first dementia champions that were trained by University of West of Scotland in conjunction with Alzheimer's Scotland. We had the privilege of hearing Tommy speak at a person-centred event in Glasgow at the SECC, and when we heard him it was very powerful, and we felt as a team that it would be really important for Tommy to come to NHS Ayrshire Arran. All the staff were very, very touched by it. It really made a difference. I think it brought back the caring side of nursing, and it was very powerful for them, because I think everybody does care, but to hear it from the other side and hear the impact that had on a relative, a carer, it just made nurses, I think, stop and think, do you know, I can make a difference if I just take a wee bit more time and try and kind of prioritise, and the wards are extremely busy, so I think just to spend that bit of time with relatives and patients to find out what matters to them, it really hit home, I think.
I mean, all these newer innovations actually wrap around what we already have in place, which is skilled dedicated elderly community mental health teams, our elderly care wards, and of course over the last few years we've been working on developing our dementia champions, and they're across both University Hospital Crosshouse, University Ayr, Hospital Ayr, and throughout the community. So again, it just demonstrates this isn't just a flash in the pan, this is something that's really important for us and something we want to do well and do better.
As Derek said earlier, this is not just a standalone. Ayrshire Arran have been committed to dementia care over a number of years, especially with the Promoting Excellence, and we now have, as Derek said, over 5,000 staff trained. But this is ongoing. We have further dates for next year, for the next 6 months, and that will probably continue on after that. There is a commitment to get everyone in Ayrshire Arran trained to some level, appropriate to their role, and we will continue to strive for that until we have trained everyone.
These are very high-level practitioners. They are pushing the boundaries of practice, if you like. Now, Janice is pushing the boundaries of practice within dementia care. Universities, in essence, as academic centres, research centres, their job is to push the boundaries. So the rationale is fairly straightforward for us. We want to engage with people that are pushing the boundaries. We want to help them push the boundaries even further. We want to learn from their experiences. We want to grow new research. We want to grow new evidence. All of these things based on improving, making things better. Because that's why our centre is policy and practice. You know, if you write a policy, it's not worth anything unless it impacts on practice. So Janice's job is to make that transition between practice, so the experience of nurses, the experience of clinical staff, the experience of families, the experience of people with dementia, the experience of service providers, and make that transition from policy into practice. That, in essence, is her job. She's that bridge between learning and making a difference.
Some of the inspections that we have, such as the older people in our acute hospitals, have been quite a challenge, how we can demonstrate real improvements in care and real person-centred care when the inspectors have come. And at times, the dominance and the necessity of getting people through the system has meant that individual people's voices has been swamped. And what Tommy's work has done is bring these voices to the fore so that we can hear them and we can listen to them. So preparing for our inspections has been so much easier since we've looked at the pledges that Tommy's had. And in the future, as we move towards an integrated world of health and social care, again, Joan's journey wasn't just about healthcare, it was about care in general across voluntary sector, health and social care. And looking at having had the Change Fund focused on dementia and the future work that we have to do within the integrated world, I've no doubt that the pledges that we've made and the memories we have of Tommy will help keep us absolutely focused on making sure the care for our patients is first class and excellent.
The pledges that have been made through the sessions with Tommy, we gave a commitment that we would revisit them in 6 months. They will be published on Athena, which is our intranet site, and we will republish them in 6 months and ask staff to reflect on where they are and what they've actually done to meet those pledges that they made.
Working in this area has shown me that it is the small things that add up to the big things, and if we all make a pledge to do something small, then that will transform the way that people with dementia live and the support that we give to people who care for them, and that is so important.
Some of them is just about getting to know people, making sure they really put patient and their loved ones at the centre of what they do. Some of it was to make sure people had the appropriate support. Some of it was to make sure people were supported with their meals, with their personal hygiene. None of which in themselves, when you look at it, is actually that tricky or that difficult. But when you're wrapped up in a busy hospital or a busy community service, you do need time to stop and think and reflect. What am I really doing here? Am I really being person-centred? And to me, the sum of all of the pledges that we have is much greater than the individual pledges. Because as individual pledges, you can do your best and you can be one small voice. But a bit like a pebble being thrown into a pond, the huge ripple effect that it has, I honestly believe we, certainly within NHS Ayrshire and Arran, have had footsteps left by Tommy and by Joan.
You all now know a wee bit about my mum's life, but you also now know more about my mum's life than most of the people involved in her care for the last 5.5 years of it, because nobody ever asked. Nobody ever asked my mum who she was, who she is, or who do you want to be. Nobody really asked, what can I do today to make you smile? What can I do today to stop you from being sad? What can we do today to make sure you feel safe? And what can we do today to stop you from being scared? And if you don't know who people are, if we don't know who they've been, who they are and who they can still be, I don't think we can truly say we're caring for them. And if we don't know the answers to those questions, if we find out the lives and the love stories and the bits that bring a smile and the bits that stop us being scared, then we are part of their love stories. We are that consultant. We are that district nurse. But most importantly of all, we're part of somebody's love story. So thank you for coming today, and I hope you go out today and make somebody's love story continue. Thank you very much.
Whilst we were on our journey, and we have some amazing clinical staff who were working incredibly hard at putting people at the centre of what we do, this has really been a fantastic catalyst. The pace, the commitment of what we will be able to do for our older people and their loved ones, I think has been hugely enhanced by Tommy and his tour. And he'll remain in my heart and in all of our hearts, I suspect, for the rest of our professional lives.